Hello, my name is Kai, and this is part 2 of my series on Liverpool's Academy. Today we're going to be looking at Liverpool's loanees. Just to preface, this video is mainly going to focus on the players that I could get data and video footage of. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to talk about the players that I didn't get a lot of data and footage on, as I have watched them at least once or twice throughout the season, but that analysis won't be as in-depth as some of the other players. Now, before I begin, I'd just like to let you know that it'd be great if you guys could subscribe, like the video, comment, and follow me on Twitter. But let's get right into the loanees. So to begin, we have Stefan Bettich here. As you can see from his data, he has a very high percentile of blocks. He seems to do well with clearances, he seems to challenge dribblers very well, and he seems to have a lot of long passes. Watching Stefan throughout the season at both Salzburg and at Las Palmas, it was clear that Stefan is a willing presser, and he really likes to stop dribblers and people running towards him with the ball, but he doesn't offer a lot in possession. The last time a lot of you watched him was probably in the 22-23 season, where he often played alongside or instead of Fabinho, so either as a 6 or an 8. I tend to profile Bettich as more of a poor man's Vieira. He's a box-to-box, ball-winning 8. But he's nowhere near as good as Vieira was. He's not even on the same level. And he doesn't offer a lot in possession, as we can see through a lot of these passing. Often his passes are too short or overhit. And in terms of his ball carrying, which we saw him do a lot better at Liverpool, that's also degraded massively, likely because of his height increase and injuries over the past few years. As we can see here, Stefan is waiting to receive the ball. He ends up receiving it and attempts to drive forward, and then he kind of has this neat little pass off to the left. One thing Stefan is really good at is driving forward and then distributing horizontally away from pressure to create crossing opportunities. This is pretty good for your run-of-the-mill midfielder, but it doesn't really make him stand out from the crowd, and this is something I'd like to see Stefan develop more of, his ability to short pass in more situations, especially forward, because he doesn't really short pass forward as much as you would like a midfielder of his stature. Here we see a panel of Stefan operating in a player's blind spot. This is something he's actually very good at, surprisingly good at. He's really good at tackling a player when they can't see him coming, just operating fully in that blind spot. Here he's going to come in and nick the ball right before the defender can get it. Now remember from earlier when we were looking at his stats that his interceptions were decent but not particularly high. I think the reason that they're, somewhat high is because of situations like this. Here's an example of Stefan doing it again, except this time he's sort of pressing. Once again, the midfielder cannot see him on the ball. He runs in, he comes to take the ball, he wins it, and lays it off to Dario Oswego. Again, we can see that Stefan is really good at pressing in general, but he's very good at operating in blind spots when pressing. He's actually pretty decent at ball winning in general. Now, a lot of people might see him as a 6 because of the fact that he can ball win, but that's actually not really the main thing a 6 needs to do. 6s need to be positionally disciplined, distribute the ball well, and cover the center backs. These aren't the things that Stefan is really good at. He needs to be sort of away from the game and then re-enter in these pressing situations, and because of that, he's more of a ball-winning 8. Again, this is another scenario of Stefan pressing. This time, you can tell that the midfielder is more aware of his presence. He comes in, he does a very unorthodox tackle, but he ends up winning the ball. Now, this is the end of my analysis on Stefan through panels. But what I'd like to say about Stefan is you can tell that I haven't really included any footage of him in possession. The reason for that is because his in possession characteristics are not very defined. It's really difficult to see what he's actually good at consistently, which is something that I actually look for. He's not particularly good at short passing forward, although he can distribute side to side like an Arthur Melo, but he doesn't carry the ball particularly well. His long passing, although he completes a decent amount of them, isn't actually that good. He kind of just hoofs it forward. The only thing that he really seems to be good at is pressing and counter-pressing and then intercepting, these sorts of things. He's not really good at any of the in-possession stuff, which is kind of interesting because, again, if you remember him from that 22-23 season, he was actually pretty good at carrying the ball forward and turning. I think ever since he's grown into his new frame, he's like 3 or 4 inches taller since then. I think he hasn't really adapted well, and it's set back his development even further because you remember he had that back injury and he's put on muscle. A lot of these things have really pushed back his development, which is why I personally don't see him succeeding at a team like Liverpool. I would loan him out for one more season, but I don't really think he's going to be ready for Liverpool, and I would sell him with a buyback clause so that in 3 or 4 years when he could potentially develop, he would be prepared for Liverpool. Now, what the tactics board shows us is right now, this is their whole team as it stands, right? I've kept in all of the players who are currently at the club and the positions that I think they would play. Now, if you bring in somebody like a Stefan Bettich, realistically, Stefan could play in McAllister's position, and against certain opposition, he could play as a 6. He could also be cover at right back. I think for a team like Liverpool, the only position that he can currently play in is as a right back. I think if you play him as an 8, he's not good enough in possession. If you play him as a 6, he's going to get caught out a lot in possession because he doesn't have the discipline. But as a right back, I think he would do a great job at just defending. And if you wanted to keep him for a season, you'd play him at right back. The thing is, we already have 2 right backs. So it really only makes sense to sell or loan Stefan. Now, I love the kid. I think he has great potential, but I just don't think he's going to reach it at a team like Liverpool. And a lot of people might not like that, but I think a lot of people haven't really watched him, barring like compilations, since he left Liverpool. And I think it would be useful to see how much he's changed as a player and how he hasn't really progressed and in some cases regressed since then. Now, Ben Doak boasts some really good statistics in the championship for a Middlesbrough side who are debatably ball dominant. Their possession pretty much fluctuates, and they had a very decent coach in Michael Carrick. Now, Ben Doak ranks really high for carries into the penalty area. He receives a lot of passes. He has a lot of touches in the attacking third, loves to carry the ball forward, really high shots on target, really high non-penalty XG per shot. You can tell that he's a very active player. But the one thing that should terrify you, and this terrifies me, is he's in the 89th percentile for take-ons attempted. But if you look at successful take-ons, he's in the 22nd percentile. That's terrifying because he attempts so many of these one-on-one dribbles and he fails a lot of them. He's very wasteful. Some people would say that that would develop with time, but can we as a club really risk that? It's kind of why I understand the Palace links. But let's not just judge him based on the numbers, let's see what he actually does in games. So this is a scenario of Ben Doak receiving the ball, looking to take on his man. He squares him up. This is something we see Ben Doak do a lot. He squares up his man, looking to go either on the left or on the right. Because if Ben Doak goes on the right, he'll go to the byline and cut in a low-driven cross. He's very good at these low-driven crosses. Or alternatively, he'll cut to the left and try to dink it with his left foot to the far post. He's somewhat two-footed, Ben Doak, in the sense that I don't think either of his feet are like incredible, but I think they're roughly the same. I think he still is biased towards his right foot because I think he's maybe more comfortable with it, but his left foot is not particularly bad when he's just passing. When he's finishing, I can see why he's right-footed. In this case, he continues to square him up. You still don't know what way he's going. He ultimately goes to the left, and like I said earlier, he dinks this ball with his left foot to the back post, and it doesn't really bear fruit. It goes over everybody. But you can kind of see that he's a very tricky winger. Let's look at another example. In this case, once again, Ben Doak receives the ball, and it looks like he's going to square up his man, except this time with his left foot, he passes the ball in behind to the fullback who then attempts to cross. What this shows is he's not really fully one-dimensional. When he squares up his fullback, he can pass it in behind. He could cut to the right and go to the byline himself. He could cut to the left and dink it. He has a lot of options from the right. And what I'd actually like to see is what would happen if Ben Doak played on the left. Because for Burrow, he mostly played on the right. And I would like to see if on the left, he's able to cut inside and shoot. So that's why I would probably lean on maybe loaning him out to another club who would play him on the left for a season. But then again, if Palace are willing to buy him for £30 million and it would help us get someone like Wharton, I would sell him. So in this scenario, the ball has been passed in behind to Ben Doak. We're seeing him receive a progressive pass and he's running on to the end of it. And again, Ben Doak is electric. He's very fast. So he receives the ball, he squares up this time the center back, he gets past him and now he goes to the byline, except there's no one to really cross to, so he doesn't cross. He kind of gets stuck in and tries to shoot at a narrow angle and it fails. Let's look at another example. Now this is Ben Doak rushing in on the ball after it's been parried away. He latches onto it and he puts in this really low-driven cross, which I think he's very good at, these low-driven crosses with his right. And I think it's why he probably plays on the right more than on the left, because he gets this low driven in, it's an assist, and it's a goal. Now, if we look back at the tactics board, where would you play someone like Ben Doak? Well, if we were to keep him this season, he would effectively be a Salah understudy. I would get rid of someone like Chiesa and have Ben Doak. Realistically, though, Ben Doak would be useful as a player to burn a left back at the end of a game, which we saw him do to Luca Digne back when Ben Doak was at the club earlier. You could also play him on the left, a similar option. He's similar to Malik Fofana in the sense that you could play him on either side and he would beat his man. But the difference is Ben Doak is way more wasteful than Malik Fofana, and he's a way worse finisher. He's not a particularly good finisher. He gets a lot of shots on target, but they're right at the goalkeeper. They're not particularly good shots. And he gets in good positions, but I just think we can't really afford players who are very wasteful in possession, get into good positions, but then don't really score. It's effectively what Darwin does. And although Ben Doak's lower risk, if you could sell him for around 30 million, I would. Otherwise, loan him out to a team that would maybe play him on the left. But again, this isn't someone I'd really keep around in the squad. Let's now look at Owen Beck. I really like Owen Beck. I think if we are looking for a backup left back, assuming we sell both Robertson and Tsimikas, Owen Beck, 1,000%. Now, if you look at his statistics, he completes a lot of tackles, a lot of blocks, tackles a lot of dribblers. I really like that he can defend in two different ways. When you watch him, he'll either parry and kind of step back and let the dribbler come closer and closer and then make a tackle, or he'll press really aggressively to try to win the ball. I like that he's very versatile. The problem that I have with Owen Beck is in possession, he's not great. He's good at doing these little cute short passes, but he's not a very good crosser of the ball. I don't think he can really pass down the line very accurately or into midfield. He's actually a decent carrier, but even when he carries, sometimes he's wasteful or he releases the ball at the wrong time. There's a lot of problems in possession, but I think as a backup left back, he would be pretty good as just a player you bring on to lock down a winger, because I think he's pretty good at that. And also, he's related to Ian Rush. I think he's his nephew or something. So that's pretty cool. But let's look at some panels. So here you can see an example of him parrying. I think this is Jaden Anthony. He was loaned in from Bournemouth to Burnley. So he squares him up. Owen Beck keeps parrying, wins the ball. He's very good at this. He's very good at parrying. Alternatively, we can see him here where he's kind of running onto Anthony really quickly because there's effectively no one in the box. It's a one-on-one. So he runs in really aggressively, gets really close to him, wins the ball again. He knocks the ball away and his teammate gets it. Incredible again by Beck, this time pressing more aggressively. Here's another scenario. He runs in, Jaden Anthony on the ball, squares him up, presses against him. He wins the ball, he turns him, and then he runs into space. Now, I'm not going to show you the end of this play because what effectively happens is he carries the ball forward, tries to pass it into midfield, and it's short, and they intercept it. But Owen Beck is really good at defending the winger that he's squaring up against. He's very smart in defending. So I would say that he would be good enough as a backup for Liverpool. And if you're concerned about the homegrown quota, he would count as homegrown. He's currently 21. It would make perfect sense. Here's another scenario. This time, Owen Beck is coming in to recover because this player is in. He gets across and he keeps pressing him, makes the tackle, and the ball goes out of play. What we can see here is he's a very good defender, but what you can tell is I haven't shown you what Owen Beck is doing in possession because he's not very good in possession. I would say loan him, but I don't really see the purpose. Either you sell him or you keep him as second choice this season, assuming you sell Robertson and Tsimikas, with the goal of maybe selling Beck at the end of the season. I'm effectively giving him like the Nico Williams treatment, like when he was Trent's backup. We kind of kept him, loaned him, and then sold him. I would do something similar with Beck, where you just kind of carry him for a little bit to maybe see if he scales, but otherwise you kind of just sell him at the end of it. But you keep him as a backup in the short term. And in this case, I won't really show you what he's going to do on the pitch because he's effectively going to play like a worse version of like Robbo or Tsimikas. He's just going to be a left back. It's not like he's Kirkez where he offers some kind of unique ability to be on the highest line and be a glorified winger. Let's now look at Lewis Kumas. I really like Lewis Kumas, and the stats don't tell you everything with him. So again, stats can often be misleading. They can show you a lot of things, but in possession dominant sides, a lot of players will look very good. Lewis Kumas is in a terrible Stoke team that virtually had no possession, and he was played on sometimes the left, sometimes the right, either side. And his main position, in my opinion, striker, but I think you could play him on either side. And for slot, he could probably even play as a 10. You could play him in any of the 4 positions, so automatically very versatile. And what you can see is in a very, very possession averse team, like a team that doesn't have a lot of possession, he has a very high amount of carries into the penalty area. He's actually a very robust ball carrier. But before we look at Lewis Kumas's ball carrying, let's see what he does out of possession. Well, you can see that this is a game where he's playing on the right. He latches on. He keeps running. Ball goes forward. He keeps running. He keeps running. He keeps running, and he wins the ball. He's a very good presser. He's very much a Klopp forward. You can tell that he came through during that era. And in fact, him and Jaden Daniels, who both played together, are both excellent pressers. They're very good at that role, which is why I think Slot kind of trusted Daniels at times, and why I do see him trusting Lewis Kumas in preseason. I actually do see him potentially having a role to play, and Slot liking him similar to James McConnell, because Kumas is just a very intelligent footballer. What we can see here is an example of Kumas carrying the ball forward. Look at this. He gets the ball, he carries it forward. He keeps going forward, keeps carrying the ball forward. He squares up his fullback, and another player is coming over to defend him. He gets to the byline, and guess what he does? He cuts in again, and then cuts away from the goal. Incredible ball carrier. And a team that has very little of the ball, Kumas is incredible. And I think if we aren't going to play him this season, we need to loan him to a higher level championship team, because I need to see how well he performs when in a team that has more of the ball. Because in the glimpses that we see of him with Stoke, a team that has like between 30 and 40% possession, where they most of the time knock the ball up to a target man, like either Nathan Lowe or they did to Cannon. With that limited amount of the ball, he still did very well, and I'd like to see how he does. And what we've seen with Kumas at Wales is he's a very good finisher. He tries to put the ball in the corner every single time with power. He's even scored a goal for Liverpool, even though that was a little bit of like a whiz-bang goal. You can see that he sort of has this like ability to score from anywhere, which is, I think, a very unique trait. Here's an example of him squaring up his fullback again, except this time he shows a lot of intelligence, because once he squares him up, he decides that I can't really beat this person. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep it simple and play it out to my fullback, who ultimately beat his man, and then this entire sequence led to a bunch of ricochets, which led to Nathan Lowe actually scoring. So what you can tell from Kumas is he's a very intelligent footballer who carries the ball well, keeps it simple in the final third, and would definitely be a player who could be a rotational or squad option for Arne Slot next season, and could play any of the 4 positions up front. Here's another example of Lewis. This time he's carrying again, and this time he fully sends the right back, gets past him, carries, and instead of getting lost in the carrying, he brings his head up and he passes the ball forward. Again, very, very intelligent footballer. I really like Lewis Kumas. And if we look at the pitch, this time we are going to bring in Lewis Kumas. If you play him on the left, he's going to offer a lot of ball carrying. He can also kind of play this left 10 role that we have. Lewis Kumas is great at carrying, and he can come inside like this or to the byline. He could very much play the left 10 role. He could play the actual 10 role. I think he's got a decent engine on him and is able to press pretty well. So against weaker opposition, you could see him as a 10. Could even play as a striker. He played there in his youth, and he's a decent finisher. He's also pretty good at hold-up play. And you can play him on the right. He finds himself on the right a decent amount for Stoke. Sometimes it's not because he lines up there. He often lines up on the left, but sometimes after corners, he finds himself on the right and is also pretty robust there. So for Slot, he offers an option in all 4 of these positions, and I think if you don't end up wanting to play him next season, you should loan him to a top half championship side. So ladies and gentlemen, let's look at Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was out on loan at Sunderland this season for the second half, and he didn't really play at all. He actually played no games because he was injured. So you may be thinking, why is he on this list? Well, I didn't want to put him with the other players like Trey Nyoni because they're younger than Dan's is. And I think this is a little bit of like a cop-out, but I wanted to analyze a little bit of Dan's game to see if he's good enough to maybe stay at Liverpool next season or if we should loan him out. I don't think we should be having any conversations about selling him, though. So the first panel of Dan's I like is he's pressing. Once again, he's a Klopp forward. I said this about Kumas. He presses, he latches on, and he forces a player to go long. This is the PSV game. And I mostly like to look at games where players start and games where they don't really score goals, because I kind of want to see their general play. Because any player can score a goal, especially if they're a forward. I more so want to see their overall play in these games because we kind of want to see how they would link up. And finishing is important, but their general play is definitely more important in my eyes. Here's an example that I love from Dan's. Incredible hold-up player. Holds up the ball, gets in this terrible situation where there's two defenders latching onto him. He spins away and lays off the ball to the winger. That's incredible center forward play. And it's something that scales up in possession. It's something that's always very useful. And a team like we have now, having a great hold-up player gives us so many options to just knock the ball long, have him bring it down, and pass it to someone like Salah, or to Frimpong running, or to Kirkes running, or to Wirtz inside, or to Szoboszlai right in front of him, right? If he's facing away from the goal, Szoboszlai would be facing our goal, you know what I mean? A lot of great options for a great hold-up player. It's something that we haven't really had for a little bit at Liverpool. Here's another example. I just kind of like this pass. He receives the ball from, I think, James McConnell and just dinks it. I think that was just really neat by Dan's. I think you can tell that Dan's was a midfielder when he was younger because of his ability to kind of execute these sorts of passes. Here's another example of Dan's. He finds himself on the left wing. And of course, Dan's has also played left wing at the academy at times. He kind of just breezes past the right back, keeps going, and then gets squared up by another player and gets fouled. But again, I like what I see. He breaks away. Dan's is a very, very good footballer. He's a good center forward. He's able to affect different phases of play from different parts of the pitch. He's good at passing. I think he struggled a lot with injuries, but he's an instinctive finisher. We saw that in the Southampton game, and he could easily play as a striker for Liverpool. If we look at the pitch, I think what Dan's is going to do is, if you're in the final third, you give Jaden the ball, and if you have some player like, let's say it's Florian Wirtz here, you have someone like Mo Salah here, you have Frimpong overlapping, you could get situations like this where Dan's receives the ball, lays it off to someone like Frimpong who's running into space after getting like pressed by multiple players. Frimpong could get it to the byline, someone like Wirtz comes in and it's a cross and a finish. I think these are the sorts of plays you could see with someone like Dan's. I think it may be more beneficial to loan him out because of how little football he's played, and it might take him a while to get up to speed. But I do think if he performs well in preseason, you keep him. Because he could be your backup striker. If you have him and Kumas, you have two good options for backup striker, which means we can just focus on getting a solid starting number 9 like Isak, or a great false 9 like Morgan Rogers. That would personally be what I would do, assuming Dan's does good in preseason. So let's look at Cade Gordon. Now, I don't have much to say about Cade. Statistically, there's not a lot of data. He didn't really play much this season because of injury, and he wasn't really preferred. I think the downfall of Cade Gordon is pretty sad. Cade used to be this incredible prospect at the club. You know, he made his debut so young, he scored so young, but injuries have really ruined his development and he's lost a lot of pace. This is the only really good action I could find for him at Norwich. He gets the ball, he cuts inside, he dinks the ball, the striker ends up getting it and fails to convert. He didn't really play much. I didn't have a lot of games that I could analyze, but yeah, for Cade Gordon, I don't really see a world where we can have him continue at Liverpool. You could maybe loan him out for one more season because I don't see his value being that high. So maybe we would loan him again. But at this point, I don't really see him succeeding at Liverpool, which is sad because of the potential that we know that he had. Because he was earmarked as a player who could be a Salah understudy, and it just hasn't gone that way for him. Now, another player that we have out on loan is Callum Scanlon. We have 3 left backs out on loan. We have Beck, Scanlon, and Chambers. They're all very different. Beck is sort of an orthodox left back. Scanlon is more of a wing back, so I think he would really suit the Kirkes role, because at times for Millwall he played as a left winger, at times he played as a left back or a left wing back. The problem with Scanlon, of course, is he didn't really play a lot this season either. Similar with Chambers, actually, because they got injuries. Scanlon is very fast. He gets in behind. He's a road runner. We saw this before in the Europa League under Klopp when Scanlon made his debut, and he did score a goal while he was out on loan at Millwall. But ultimately, I think injuries have held him back too. I would loan him out, but if he does well in preseason, he could be another option for backup left back, assuming again that we sell Robertson and Tsimikas. You could even keep him and Beck alongside Kirkes and have 3 left backs with 2 understudies, where they're kind of splitting time between the academy and Liverpool. You could do something like that, but I would be more likely to keep someone like Luke Chambers and Beck and send Scanlon out on loan again, because I do want to see a full season of him to see if he could be a good left back for Liverpool, because he's still a very error-prone player. But let's look at the pitch for a moment. One thing that Scanlon does offer you is something similar to Frimpong, where he could play as a left winger. Similar to how Frimpong could play as a right winger, Scanlon could play as a left winger in theory, so maybe that makes him more beneficial because he's more versatile. But if we're looking for versatility, I think it makes way more sense to look at Luke Chambers, because Luke Chambers has played as a left wing back, a left back, and as a left center back throughout his Wigan career. Again, he hasn't played a lot this season, but Chambers is a much better defender than Callum Scanlon. He's a similar level of defender, maybe even a little bit better than Owen Beck. He's great in possession. He's a bit injury prone. I do like Luke Chambers a lot. I think you'd struggle to see him as a starter at Liverpool ever at left back, because Kirkes is going to operate like a glorified winger, in my opinion, and that's something that Chambers can't really do. But if you wanted a defensive option at left back and emergency cover at center back, he kind of profiles like a worse version of Jarell Hato. So you could keep someone like Chambers, and like I just said, if you had somebody like Luke Chambers, you can play him in Van Dijk's position. You could play him here. You wouldn't really want to play him here, but in emergencies, it would be possible. And the last player I want to talk about is Lucas Stephenson. Now, last season, I really liked Harvey Blair in preseason, and then we sold him to Portsmouth. Lucas Stephenson is another player I just really like. Throughout his entire spell at Dundee and Barrow last season, Dundee this season, he has played left back, right wing back, left wing back, effectively as a right winger, in a double pivot on the right side of a midfield 3. He's played everywhere. He's, I think, 6'2", 6'3". He scored a great diving header as well. I think what I like about Luca is that he's very intelligent. He knows where to be, good at box crashing, good short passer, defensively sound. He's just a good player. He was Dundee United's young player of the year in the SPL, which is effectively as good as League One at best. But I would like to see us loan him out to a championship team for a season. If he's good in preseason, I could even see a world where we keep him as backup in emergencies, because he can cover so many positions. But I do think that Dundee is just going to buy him, similar to like the Leighton Clarkson deal where Aberdeen just bought him. I do see him just getting sold there, but I would like to see him in preseason, because even in last year's preseason under Slot, I thought he was good. I do want to see him in a more ball-dominant team. So if we don't sell him and we don't keep him in the squad, similar to Lewis Kumas, send him to a top-level championship team and see if he's really that guy. That's what I would do. Yeah, that's it for this video. The next part of this series, we're going to talk about who Liverpool should promote from their academy, while also looking at some players like Trey Nyoni, Rio Ngamoa, Trent Kone-Doherty, James McConnell, and seeing if any of these players should stay at Liverpool next season, should be loaned out, or even sold, although I don't think any of them should be sold, but maybe there's a chance. Please remember to like the video, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and as always, thanks for watching.